Did you know that there's a hidden ingredient in many of the foods we eat every day? It's worse than high fructose corn syrup, sugar, starches, and even seed oils, all of which are already known for their adverse health impacts. This ingredient isn't even listed on food labels, and you won't find it in the traditional sense because it's not an ingredient at all. It's a byproduct. This byproduct is known as acrylamide, and it's more dangerous than you probably realize. Before we begin, I'm curious about you. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments, and feel free to ask any questions you might have. Let's step back for a moment and think about how our food gets processed. You know that crunchy snack you love, the golden brown fries you can't resist, or even that sweet caramelized crust on your toast. All of those delicious treats are typically cooked or fried at high temperatures, and that's when acrylamide is formed. But what's the big deal, right? After all, we eat these foods all the time and seem to be okay. Well, that's exactly why we need to take a closer look. Acrylamide is a chemical that forms when a certain amino acid, called asparagine, interacts with sugars like glucose or fructose when exposed to high heat. This process is part of what's known as the Maillard reaction, which is what gives your food that appealing golden brown color and crispy texture. Unfortunately, while it makes food look tasty, it also produces something harmful, acrylamide. What makes this ingredient particularly frightening is that it's not just a minor irritant, it's a Class A carcinogen. That means it has been identified as a probable cause of cancer in humans. Studies, including those conducted on mice and rats, have shown that acrylamide can lead to cancer development. And it's not just cancer. Acrylamide is also a potent neurotoxin, meaning it damages your nervous system and can affect your brain function. On top of that, it wreaks havoc on reproductive health and has been linked to several other long-term health problems. But the scary part? Despite its potentially lethal effects, you won't find acrylamide listed as an ingredient on any food packaging. Why? Because it's not an ingredient. It's a byproduct formed during cooking or processing, particularly when heat is involved. This means that while you might be trying your best to avoid toxic additives, you could still be exposing yourself to a major health risk without even knowing it. What's even more alarming is that around 40% of our foods contain acrylamide, particularly processed foods like potato chips, corn chips, French fries, baked goods, breakfast cereals, crackers, cookies, and even roasted coffee. Yes, coffee, a popular beverage many of us consume daily, can have significant levels of acrylamide, especially if it's roasted at high temperatures. So if you're thinking about sipping that cup of joe, you might want to consider how it's prepared, as the roasting process directly affects acrylamide levels. The question now becomes, how do we reduce our exposure to this toxic byproduct? Fortunately, there are a few steps we can take to protect ourselves and still enjoy some of our favorite foods. First, let's talk about the role of fats in food preparation. When foods are fried, the oil used in the cooking process can influence the formation of acrylamide. Most fast food chains and processed food manufacturers use vegetable oils, like seed oils, which contribute to the creation of acrylamide. But here's an interesting twist. When you switch to saturated fats, like beef fat, tallow, or coconut oil, you don't get the same chemical reaction. For example, McDonald's used to fry their fries in tallow before the 1990s, and guess what? The fries didn't have acrylamide in them even though they were cooked at high temperatures. The switch to vegetable oils is part of the reason why we're seeing more acrylamide in fast foods today. Another way to reduce acrylamide formation is by using natural sugars instead of highly processed ones. Refined sugars like glucose syrup, dextrose, or high fructose corn syrup play a significant role in creating the chemical reaction that forms acrylamide. If you're baking at home or cooking something that requires sweetening, try using less processed sugars like raw honey or even sugar cane. This small change can help reduce the likelihood of acrylamide being produced. Speaking of cooking methods, it's important to be mindful of the temperature at which you cook your food. The higher the heat, the greater the chance that acrylamide will form. So instead of deep frying or roasting foods at excessively high temperatures, try using lower cooking temperatures. Slow cooking, steaming, or baking at lower heat are great alternatives that can still produce tasty meals without the added risk of acrylamide. But let's not just stop there. We also need to focus on eating more whole, unprocessed foods. The more natural and unrefined the food, the less likely it is to contain harmful byproducts like acrylamide. Whole vegetables, fruits, and meats, for example, contain little to no acrylamide, and they also provide valuable nutrients that support your overall health. Now let's talk about a few specific foods that can help neutralize the harmful effects of acrylamide. The first group of foods are cruciferous vegetables, things like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, cabbage, and arugula. These vegetables contain compounds that help to protect your body from toxins, including acrylamide. Adding these to your meals can give you a little extra defense against its harmful effects. Another helpful addition to your diet is garlic. Garlic contains sulfur compounds that support detoxification processes in the body, helping to neutralize harmful substances like acrylamide. And let's not forget about vitamin C. Foods rich in vitamin C, such as citrus fruits, bell peppers, and sauerkraut, have been shown to protect against the formation of acrylamide. Green tea is another great option for reducing your risk, as it contains powerful antioxidants that help protect your body from harmful toxins. If you happen to be a coffee lover, don't fret too much. There are ways to enjoy your favorite brew without exposing yourself to high levels of acrylamide. One simple tip is to choose dark roasted coffee over light roasted varieties. Dark roast coffee is roasted at a higher temperature, which makes acrylamide less stable and reduces its presence in the final product. Light roast coffee, on the other hand, contains significantly more acrylamide because it's roasted at lower temperatures. Understanding the chemistry behind acrylamide formation is essential for reducing our exposure to it. As mentioned earlier, acrylamide forms through the Maillard reaction, which occurs when asparagine, an amino acid found in foods like corn, wheat, rice, and soy, reacts with sugars like glucose, fructose, or other refined sugars under high heat. When the temperature exceeds 285 degrees, 140 degrees Celsius, this reaction takes place, producing acrylamide. But it doesn't stop there. Acrylamide can break down into even more harmful compounds. One of these byproducts is glycinamide, which is even more toxic and carcinogenic than acrylamide itself. This is why it's so crucial to avoid highly processed foods and cooking methods that involve high heat, as they create these dangerous chemicals in our food. The sad reality is that most of us are eating ultra-processed foods on a regular basis without realizing the full extent of the risks involved. For example, teenagers today consume an alarming percentage of their calories from ultra-processed foods, around 67%. Adults are no better, with more than 50% of their caloric intake coming from processed foods. Even toddlers aren't immune, with nearly half of their calories coming from processed food. These foods are often the culprits behind the creation of acrylamide, and they can have serious long-term health consequences. Now that we've discussed acrylamide, you might be wondering if there are other similar substances that we should be aware of in our diets. Well, I'm glad you asked, because there are quite a few. Let's talk about other ingredients or compounds that, much like acrylamide, can form in our food during cooking or processing, and how they might be just as concerning for our health. Let's start with advanced glycation end products, AGs. You've probably heard of the term glycation before, but you might not realize how it relates to the foods we eat. Glycation happens when sugars in our food bind to proteins or fats in our bodies, and the end products of this process are known as AGs. This doesn't just happen in our body, it can happen in our food, especially when it's cooked at high temperatures. Foods that are grilled, fried, or roasted tend to have higher levels of AGs because these cooking methods involve high heat. For instance, when you cook meat, especially red meat like steak or even poultry, the higher the temperature, the more AGs are formed. So when you're biting into that crispy golden chicken wing or enjoying a well-done burger, you're not just tasting the delicious flavors, you're also getting a hefty dose of AGs. These compounds are believed to contribute to inflammation and oxidative stress in the body, which could potentially lead to various chronic health issues, including heart disease and diabetes. But here's the good news. Just like with acrylamide, you don't have to completely cut out your favorite grilled steak or crispy chicken. You just need to be mindful of moderation and consider using lower temperature cooking methods. Steaming, poaching, or braising your meat can help minimize the formation of AGs while still delivering delicious meals. So next time you're cooking at home, try switching up your cooking methods to keep your food tasty and healthier. Next, let's talk about heterocyclic amines, HCAs. HCAs are another type of compound that forms when we cook meat, particularly at high temperatures. When meat is exposed to high heat, like when grilling or barbecuing, the amino acids in the meat react with sugars and creatine, a compound found in muscle tissue, to form HCAs. These compounds have been linked to an increased risk of cancer, particularly colon and stomach cancers, in some studies. You might be thinking, okay, so should I just avoid all grilled meats forever? Not necessarily. Like with AGs and acrylamide, it's all about balance. Grilling is not evil, it's just a matter of using a bit more awareness. If you love grilling, there are ways to reduce HCA formation. One trick is to marinate your meat before grilling. Studies have shown that marinades, especially those that include acidic ingredients like lemon juice or vinegar, can help lower the formation of HCAs. And if you're grilling, try cooking at a lower heat and flipping the meat frequently to avoid charring it. Alternatively, you can switch things up and bake or broil your meat, which can lower the temperatures at which the HCA-forming reactions occur. So while grilling can be tasty, it's definitely worth trying these tips to make your meals a bit healthier and less risky. Let's now look at trans fats. Trans fats are another villain in the world of processed foods. These fats are created when manufacturers add hydrogen to liquid oils to make them more solid. This is called hydrogenation. You'll find trans fats in a wide variety of processed foods, such as margarine, packaged snacks, and fast food items like fried chicken or donuts. Trans fats have a bad reputation for a reason. They're linked to an increased risk of heart disease. They raise bad cholesterol, LDL, levels and lower good cholesterol, HDL levels in your body, which can lead to plaque buildup in your arteries and increase your risk of a heart attack or stroke. That's why, even though trans fats are banned or heavily regulated in many countries, they're still found in certain processed foods. But there's good news. You can avoid trans fats by making informed choices. Start by reading food labels to check if any products contain partially hydrogenated oils. These are the culprits that contribute to trans fat content. You can also switch to healthier oils such as olive oil or avocado oil, which are rich in monounsaturated fats and are much better for your heart. So while it may be tempting to reach for a snack bag of chips or a pre-made pie, remember that you have control over what goes into your body. Keep an eye on those labels and opt for healthier alternatives. Now, what about sodium nitrite and nitrate? Nitrates and nitrites are commonly used as preservatives in processed meats like bacon, sausages, and hot dogs. These chemicals help prevent bacterial growth, improve the color, and extend the shelf life of meats. However, when nitrates and nitrites react with compounds in the meat, they can form nitrosamines, which have been linked to an increased risk of cancer. If you're a fan of bacon or sausage, don't worry, you don't have to give them up completely. Just like with the other compounds we've talked about, moderation is key. You can reduce your exposure to nitrates by choosing nitrate-free meats or by opting for fresh, unprocessed cuts of meat. If you're craving a good hot dog or burger, look for options labeled as nitrate-free or uncured, and be mindful of how often you're consuming these products. Now let's move on to bisphenol A, BPA. BPA is a chemical compound often found in plastics and resins, especially in food and drink packaging. It's commonly used to make plastic bottles, food containers, and the lining of canned foods. When BPA leaches into your food or drink, it can act as an endocrine disruptor, interfering with hormone function and potentially leading to various health issues, including reproductive problems, obesity, and an increased risk of certain cancers. To avoid BPA, try to reduce your consumption of canned foods and beverages that come in plastic bottles. Instead, opt for fresh, frozen, or glass-packaged products. If you're buying canned goods, check for BPA-free labeling, as many companies have moved towards safer alternatives. And when it comes to plastic containers, look for ones labeled BPA-free or choose glass or stainless steel as an alternative. With just a little extra care, you can minimize your exposure to BPA and make safer choices for you and your family. Let's talk about phthalates. Phthalates are chemicals used to make plastics more flexible and durable, and they're often found in food packaging, toys, cosmetics, and even medical devices. Like BPA, phthalates are considered endocrine disruptors. They can leach into your food, especially when plastic containers or wraps are heated, and they've been linked to various health problems, including developmental issues in children and an increased risk of asthma. To reduce your exposure to phthalates, avoid microwaving food in plastic containers. Use glass or ceramic containers instead, especially when reheating leftovers. When buying food, try to choose fresh or frozen products instead of those packaged in plastic. If you're concerned about phthalates in personal care products, look for those labeled phthalate-free. Small changes like these can help reduce your exposure to these harmful chemicals. Monosodium glutamate, MSG. Monosodium glutamate, MSG, is a flavor enhancer commonly added to processed foods, canned soups, salty snacks, and takeout meals. While MSG is generally considered safe by food safety authorities, some people may experience sensitivity to it. This sensitivity can cause symptoms like headaches, sweating, and a feeling of pressure in the chest, a phenomenon often referred to as Chinese restaurant syndrome. Even though MSG might not be harmful to most people, if you're one of the individuals who are sensitive to it, you might want to avoid foods that contain it. Check food labels for the ingredient monosodium glutamate or its alternative names like hydrolyzed vegetable protein or autolyzed yeast extract. You can also make meals at home using fresh ingredients and natural flavorings like herbs, garlic, and onion to avoid the hidden MSG in processed foods. Now, what about artificial sweeteners? Artificial sweeteners such as aspartame, sucralose, known as Splenda, and saccharin are commonly used in sugar-free or diet foods and drinks. While they are considered safe for most people, there is some ongoing debate about their long-term health effects. Some studies suggest that consuming artificial sweeteners may alter gut bacteria, increase cravings for sweet foods, and even contribute to metabolic issues. If you enjoy the sweetness of soda or sugar-free snacks, consider switching to natural alternatives like stevia or monk fruit. These sweeteners are derived from plants and have less impact on blood sugar levels than artificial ones. Plus, they're generally considered a healthier option. If you're trying to reduce your intake of artificial sweeteners, drinking water, herbal teas, or using honey in moderation are good choices. Now let's discuss propylparaben. It is a preservative commonly used in cosmetics, personal care products, and even some food items. It's part of the paraben family, which is known for helping to extend the shelf life of products by preventing the growth of harmful bacteria. While parabens are generally recognized as safe in low concentrations, some studies have shown that they can be absorbed through the skin and into the bloodstream. There they can mimic estrogen and disrupt hormone balance, potentially leading to fertility issues, developmental problems, and an increased risk of certain cancers. To minimize exposure to propylparaben and other parabens, try choosing personal care products labeled as paraben-free. If you're concerned about your food, look for packaged goods that don't contain artificial preservatives or opt for fresh and unprocessed options. Small lifestyle changes can help reduce your overall exposure to parabens. Now, if you've ever looked at the ingredient list of brightly coloured candies or processed foods, you might have noticed artificial food dyes like red 40, yellow 5, or blue 1. These synthetic colorants are added to food and beverages to make them more appealing, but they've been linked to hyperactivity in children and potential allergic reactions. Some studies have also raised concerns about the long-term impact of these dyes on health, including an increased risk of cancer. To avoid these food dyes, choose natural food colors, often derived from fruits, vegetables, or spices, like beet juice, spinach powder, or turmeric. You can also stick to whole, unprocessed foods that don't contain artificial colorants. While a brightly colored snack might seem tempting, your body will thank you for choosing options that are free from synthetic dyes. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you learned something valuable today. Remember, staying informed about what's in our food and products is one of the best ways to take control of your health. It's not about being perfect, but making smarter choices where you can. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with anyone who could benefit from this info. Stay healthy, stay aware, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.